The suburban morning was quiet, almost too quiet for what was about to unfold. Rows of neatly trimmed lawns and perfectly painted houses lined the street, each one reflecting the pride of its owners. But in front of one particular house, chaos had suddenly broken the calm. A woman in her mid-40s, wearing a red t-shirt and jeans, stood angrily on the driveway. Her hands were raised as if trying to physically push back the injustice she had faced. Her eyes were a mixture of anger, frustration, and deep concern. In front of her, two police officers stood, notebooks and pens in hand, trying to maintain calm. "I've told you before," she shouted, her voice breaking slightly from the intensity of her frustration. "Ma'am, we understand you are upset, but we have to follow procedure. Please stay calm," one of the officers said, his tone firm but gentle. The woman drew a deep breath, her eyes fixed on her house. Her anger was not only directed at the police, but also at the man behind the situation. Her neighbor, a prominent and influential member of the homeowners association, had disrupted the peace of her home in a way that was beyond any reasonable justification. "This isn't right. Damaging my property and then pretending nothing happened," she demanded, her voice rising. Her hands clenched into fists as she struggled to control herself. The officers began taking notes. She gave them her full name, address, and details about the incident, but she kept repeating her story, trying to make sure every single aspect of it was recorded. "Last night, around 11, I was inside my home. I heard loud noises outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind or maybe kids playing, but when I looked out through the window, I saw him. He was tampering with my mailbox, dragging something across the lawn. I tried to record it, but by the time I grabbed my phone, he had disappeared. I didn't know what to do," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The officers nodded, asking her more details. "Did anyone else see him? Did you hear anything else?" "No, I was alone. I shouted a few times, but it didn't stop him. My husband is away for work, and my daughter was at school. I was completely alone," she explained. The younger officer looked at his partner and whispered something, then turned back. "Ma'am, did you notice any damage besides the mailbox?" "Yes, my garden. The flower beds were trampled. My garden gnome is broken. It's ridiculous. This is supposed to be a safe neighborhood." And yet, she paused, unable to finish the sentence. The older officer stepped closer. "Do you have any security cameras that might have captured the incident?" "Yes, but he knew about them. He probably disabled them beforehand. This has been going on for months. Ever since he got this HOA power, he's been controlling everything, telling everyone how to maintain their lawns, where to park, and even what color they can paint their doors. But this is different. This is personal," she said, clenching her jaw. The officers exchanged a look. It was clear this wasn't a simple complaint. This was about ongoing tension, a fight between neighbors that had escalated to outright harassment. "Okay, we'll take the report, ma'am. We'll investigate and see if there's a pattern. Any proof you have, photos, videos, even eyewitnesses, will help," one officer said. The woman nodded, but did not seem relieved. "Proof? How do I prove it when he's so careful? He's sneaky. He's done this before. Just small things at first, little annoyances that everyone dismissed. I try to keep my distance, thinking he'd leave me alone. But now it's beyond that." The older officer nodded slowly. "We understand. We'll document everything. You're doing the right thing by reporting it." She sighed and ran a hand over her face. "It's exhausting. I've spent sleepless nights worrying about what he might do next. Every time I step outside, I feel like I'm under surveillance, like he's watching me. And when I call the HOA, they always take his side. He's influential and I'm just me." The younger officer wrote something down in his notebook. "Ma'am, do you want us to stay here while you assess the damage? Or do you feel safe to go inside?" I don't feel safe," she admitted quietly. "Every shadow looks like him. Every sound makes me jump. I can't just ignore this anymore. He's crossed the line." The older officer nodded. "We'll arrange for patrols in the area. In the meantime, document everything. Any small detail might be useful. And if he comes back, call us immediately. We will respond." The woman's eyes softened slightly, a mixture of relief and continued frustration. "Thank you. I don't understand how someone can be so cruel." We've all tried to live peacefully here. I've always been friendly with neighbors, participated in community events, followed every rule, and yet he picks on me. It feels like a nightmare." The officer stayed for a while longer, asking questions about previous incidents. She recounted stories of small damages, strange noises at night, and subtle threats. Each tale added to the weight of what she had endured. By the time the officers left, she was standing in front of her house, arms crossed, staring at the lawn. The damage was minor in material terms: broken flowers, a toppled mailbox, but the psychological toll was massive. She felt violated, vulnerable, and alone, yet there was a spark of determination in her eyes. She walked slowly along the driveway, inspecting the ground. Every footprint, every scrape on the lawn told a story. This wasn't just about property, it was about respect, about boundaries, about standing her ground. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, curious but cautious. Some whispered to each other about what had happened, while others pretended not to notice. The suburban bubble of perfection had been punctured, revealing tension that was normally hidden behind polite smiles and manicured lawns. Inside the house, she began taking photos of the damage, cataloging everything in her phone. She started typing notes, organizing events in chronological order. Each small entry reinforced her resolve. This wasn't just a nuisance anymore. It was harassment, and she intended to make sure it stopped. Her mind began racing with possibilities. She thought about confronting the neighbor directly, about talking to the HOA, about seeking legal counsel. Every option seemed complicated and risky, but doing nothing was no longer acceptable. Even as she worked, she heard the faint hum of a lawnmower in the distance. A new day was beginning in the neighborhood, as if nothing had happened. But for her, nothing would ever feel the same again. The morning that had started so quietly had turned into a turning point. Her phone buzzed. A text from her daughter appeared. "Mom, are you okay?" She smiled faintly. The first small relief she had felt in hours. She typed back quickly, "I'm okay. Just some trouble with a neighbor. Don't worry." Then she looked back at her lawn, at the broken mailbox, at the trampled flowers. Her hands tightened into fists again. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. She glanced out the window, scanning the street. Every car, every pedestrian felt like a potential threat. Yet beneath the anxiety, a plan started forming. If this neighbor thought he could intimidate her, he was about to find out that she wasn't someone to be messed with. The suburban peace had been broken, and in the silence that followed, she could almost hear the echo of her own determination. Whatever came next, she was ready. The following day, the neighborhood appeared calm again. Sunlight streamed over the neatly lined houses, and children rode bikes down the sidewalks, their laughter drifting through the air. Yet for her, nothing felt calm. She was hyper-aware of every sound, every movement outside her house. The events of the previous night weighed heavily, fueling both fear and determination. She decided to take action. Sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open, she drafted a detailed timeline of every incident involving her neighbor, including photos, notes, and witness accounts from previous minor incidents. Her goal was clear. She needed evidence to hold him accountable, something the HOA and police could not ignore. By mid-morning, she heard a familiar car engine pull into the driveway next door. Her stomach tightened. It was him, the HOA president, driving his sleek black SUV, probably acting oblivious to the chaos he had caused. She observed from behind the curtain, noting every detail. The way he stepped out confidently, the casual glance around the street as if nothing had happened. She felt a surge of anger. "He thinks he can intimidate me? Not anymore," she muttered. Grabbing her phone, she snapped discreet pictures from inside her house. Minutes later, the officers from yesterday arrived, responding to her call. She opened the door for them, waving them inside. "He's here," she said, trying to control her voice. The older officer nodded, already scanning the situation. "We'll monitor, but do not confront him yourself. Stay safe." From her vantage point, she watched as he started inspecting her lawn with a casual air, occasionally glancing toward her house. It was deliberate, a silent provocation. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she prepared herself mentally. rehearsing what she would say and how she would remain composed. Her daughter returned from school, sensing the tension immediately. "Mom, is he still here?" she asked. The woman smiled faintly, kneeling to hug her. "Yes, sweetie, but everything will be okay. How about help now?" Hours passed. The officers kept watch discreetly, taking notes on his behavior. The neighbor, oblivious to the documentation being collected, attempted subtle intimidation, stepping onto her lawn briefly, leaning near her mailbox, and making phone calls loudly, ensuring she could hear him. By late afternoon, she made her move. She called the HOA office, requesting an emergency meeting. The assistant on the line tried to dismiss her concerns, but she was firm. "This is harassment. You cannot ignore it. I have evidence. I will not remain silent while my property and peace of mind are violated." Within an hour, representatives from the HOA arrived. The officers accompanied her, ensuring the situation did not escalate further. Inside the neutral meeting room, the tension was palpable. Her neighbor sat across the table, wearing a mask of casual authority, while she presented her evidence. Photos of damaged property, a detailed timeline, and notes on prior incidents. "Every action you've taken, every subtle intimidation, has been documented," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the anger simmering beneath. "I expected to live in a neighborhood that respected its residents. I did not expect to be targeted personally." The HOA representative looked at her files, flipping through the pages. "This is extensive," one admitted. "We'll have to review this carefully." Her neighbor shifted uncomfortably, his confidence wavering. This seems exaggerated," he muttered. "Exaggerated?" she repeated, her eyes narrowing. "The mailbox? The trampled garden? The repeated harassment over months? This is not exaggeration. This is fact. And if no one else will enforce the rules, I will escalate this further." The officers remained in the room, noting the neighbor's reaction. His face reddened slightly as he realized the weight of her evidence. Every casual intimidation, every subtle act of control had been recorded. The power he had wielded for months was now undermined by documentation and witnesses. The meeting ended with a firm decision from the HOA. Her neighbor was to be formally warned, and any future incidents would result in fines, suspension of HOA privileges, or even legal action. She felt a surge of relief, though she knew vigilance was still necessary. Back at home, she walked across her lawn, inspecting the damage again. It still stung, but the sense of control had returned. For the first time in months, she felt that she could reclaim her space. Her daughter joined her, and together they started picking up the broken gnome and replanting flowers. It was a small act, but it symbolized restoration and resilience. Over the next few days, the neighborhood seemed to take notice. Other residents who had quietly endured minor annoyances began speaking up, inspired by her courage. She shared her experience discreetly with them, emphasizing documentation and safe reporting rather than confrontation. Slowly, the neighborhood began to reclaim a sense of community that had been disrupted. Her neighbor, now aware that his actions had consequences, backed off. He avoided direct interaction and no longer attempted intimidation tactics. Though he still maintained influence within the HOA, her assertiveness had created a boundary that even he would not cross lightly. One evening, she sat on her porch, a cup of tea in her hand, watching the sun set over the suburban rooftops. The street, once filled with tension, now carried a quiet peace. She reflected on the journey, the fear, the sleepless nights, the frustration, and ultimately the empowerment that came from standing up for herself. Her daughter joined her again, leaning on her shoulder. "Mom, I'm proud of you," she said softly. She smiled, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. "We did it together," she replied. She realized that while one person can spark change, community support and persistence were essential to maintain it. The mailbox was still slightly crooked, and the garden wasn't perfect, but those imperfections now symbolized strength and resistance rather than defeat. She had reclaimed her home, not just physically, but psychologically. As night fell, the streetlights flickered on, casting a gentle glow across the neighborhood. She knew challenges could return, and that vigilance was necessary. But she also understood that fear no longer controlled her. She was prepared, resilient, and aware of her own strength. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe in her own home. The angry morning that had once felt like the start of a nightmare had transformed into a story of courage, persistence, and quiet victory. And though the suburban streets returned to their seemingly perfect calm, she knew that beneath the neat lawns and painted doors, the power to stand up for oneself had the potential to change everything.